Ananda said to the Buddha, "World-honored one, if this seeing essence is indeed my wonderful nature is now in front of me. If the seeing is truly me, what then are my present body and mind? Yet it is my body and mind which make distinctions, whereas the seeing does not make distinctions and does not discern my body. If it is really my mind which causes me to see now, then the seeing nature is actually me, and the body is not me. How is this different from the question the thus come one asks about things being able to see me? I only hope the Buddha will let fall his great compassion and explain for those who have not yet awakened." The Buddha told Ananda, "What you have now said, that the seeing is in front of you, is actually not the case. If it were really in front of you, it would be something you would actually see, and then the seeing essence would have a location. It wouldn't be that there is no evidence of it. Now as you sit in the Jeta grove, you look about everywhere at the grove, the ponds, the halls, as far as the sun and moon, and with the Ganges river before you. Now before my lion seat, point out these various appearances. What is dark is the groves. What is bright is the sun. What is obstructing is the walls. What is clear is emptiness, and so on from the grasses and trees to the finest particle of hair. Their sizes vary, and since they all have appearances, none cannot be located. If it is certain that your seeing is in front of you, then with your hand you should with certainty point out what the seeing is. Ananda, if emptiness is the seeing, then how can it remain empty, since it has already become your seeing? If a thing is the seeing, how can it be external to you as an object, since it has already become your seeing? You can cut through and peel away the myriad appearances to the finest degree in order to distinguish and bring forth the essential brightness and pure wonder of the source of seeing, pointing it out and showing it to me from among all these things, so that it is perfectly clear beyond any doubt." Ananda said, "From where I am now, in this many-storied lecture hall, as far as the distant Ganges river and the sun and moon overhead, all that I might raise my hand to point to, all that I indulge my eyes in seeing, are all things. They are not the seeing. World-honored one, it is as the Buddha has said, not merely myself, who am a Shravaka of the first stage, who still has outflows, but even bodhisattvas cannot break open and reveal, among the myriad appearances which are before them, an essence of seeing which has a special self-nature, apart from all things." The Buddha said, "So it is, so it is." The Buddha said further to Ananda, "It is as you have said. There is no seeing essence to be found, existing separately among all the things. Therefore, all the things you point to are things, and none is the seeing. Now I will tell you. You and the thus come one sit in the Jeta grove and look again at the groves and gardens, as far as the sun and moon, and at all the various different appearances, and it is certain that the seeing essence is not among whatever you point to. You can go ahead and reveal what among these things is not your seeing." Ananda said, "I see clearly all over this Jeta grove, and I do not know what in the midst of it is not my seeing. Why, if trees are not the seeing, why do I see trees? If trees are the seeing, then what becomes of trees? The same is true of everything up to and including emptiness. If emptiness is not the seeing, Why do I see emptiness? If emptiness is the seeing, then what becomes of emptiness? As I consider it again, I reveal the subtlest aspects of the myriad appearances. None is not my seeing. The Buddha said, "So it is, so it is." Then all in the great assembly, who had not reached the stage beyond learning, were stunned upon hearing these words of the Buddha, and could not perceive where the meaning began or ended. They were agitated and taken aback at the same time, having lost what they had adhered to. The thus come one, knowing they were anxious and uneasy in spirit, let pity rise in his heart as he consoled Ananda and everyone in the great assembly. Good people, what the unsurpassed Dharma King says is true and real. He speaks things as they are. He does not deceive. He does not lie. He is not Maskari Goshaliputra with his 4 kinds of non-dying theories that are deceptive and confusing. You should consider this attentively. It is no disgrace to pity or to implore. Then Manjusri, son of the Dharma King, took pity on the 4 assemblies, rose from his seat in the midst of the great assembly, bowed at the Buddha's feet, placed his palms together respectfully, and said to the Buddha, "World-honored one, the great assembly has not awakened to the principle of the thus come one's twofold disclosure of the essence of seeing as being both form and emptiness, as being neither of them. World-honored one, if the causal form, emptiness, and other phenomena mentioned above were the seeing, there should be an indication of its distance, and if they were not the seeing, there should be nothing visible to be seen. Now we do not know what is meant, and this is why we are alarmed and concerned. It is not that our good roots from former lives are deficient. We only hope the thus come one will have the great compassion to reveal exactly what all the things are and what the seeing essence is. Is it that there is no question of is or is not in all of this? The Buddha told Manjusri and the great assembly, to the thus come ones and the great bodhisattvas of the 10 directions who dwell in this samadhi, seeing and the conditions of seeing, as well as the characteristics of thought, are like flowers in space, fundamentally non-existent. This seeing and its conditions are originally the wonderful pure bright substance of Bodhi. How can one speak of is and is not? Manjusri, I now ask you, take yourself as an example, Manjusri. Is there still another Manjusri? Is there a Manjusri who is and a Manjusri who is not? So it is, well-honored one. I am truly Manjusri. There is no Manjusri who is. Why? If there was still another Manjusri who is Manjusri, there would be 2 Manjusris. But it is not that now I am not Manjusri. In fact, neither of the 2 characteristics is and is not exists. The Buddha said, this is not only the case with the seeing, the basic substance of wonderful Bodhi, but also with emptiness and mundane objects. They are basically the projections or manifestations of the wonderful brightness of unsurpassed Bodhi, the pure, perfect, true mind. They are falsely taken to be form and emptiness, as well as hearing and seeing. Just as with the second moon, which one is the moon, and which is not the moon. Manjusri, there is only one true moon, and within it there is not a moon that is or a moon that is not. Therefore, Now as you contemplate the seeing and the mundane things together, all the things you disclose are called false thoughts. You cannot transcend is and is not from within them. With the true essence, the wonderful enlightened bright nature, you can get beyond trying to point out or not point out. Ananda said to the Buddha, "World-honored one, it is truly as the Dharma King has said, the condition of enlightenment pervades the 10 directions, clear, everlasting, and by nature neither produced nor extinguished. How does it differ then from the first Brahma Kapila's teaching of the profound truth, or from the teaching of the ascetics who throw ashes on themselves, or from the other externalist sects that say there is a real self which pervades the 10 directions? Also, in the past, the world-honored one gave a lecture on Mount Lanka, explaining the principle thoroughly for the sake of the great wisdom Bodhisattva and others. Externalist sects always speak of spontaneity. I speak of causes and conditions, which is an entirely different principle. Now, as I contemplate the nature of enlightenment as spontaneous, as neither produced nor extinguished, and as apart from all empty falseness and inversion, it seems to have nothing to do with your causes and conditions, or the spontaneity advocated by others. Would you please enlighten us on this point, lest we should fall into the deviant paths, thus enabling us to obtain the true mind, the bright nature of wonderful enlightenment? The Buddha told Ananda, "Now I've instructed you with such expedients in order to tell you the truth, yet you do not awaken to it, but mistake it for spontaneity." Ananda, if it definitely was spontaneous, you should be able to distinguish the substance of the spontaneity. Now you look into the wonderful bright seeing. What is itself? Does the seeing take bright light as itself? Does it take darkness as itself? Does it take emptiness as itself? Does it take solid objects as itself? Ananda, if itself consists in light, you should not see darkness. Moreover, if it takes emptiness as a substance of itself, you should not see solid objects. Continuing in the same way, if it takes all dark appearances as itself, then when it is light, the seeing nature is cut off and extinguished. And how can you see light? Ananda said, "I am certain that the nature of this wonderful seeing is not spontaneous. Now I discern that it is produced from causes and conditions, but I do not yet have it clear in my mind. I now ask the thus come one, how this idea is consonant with the nature of causes and conditions." The Buddha said, "You say it is causes and conditions. I asked you again, because you are now seeing, the seeing nature manifests. Is it because of light that the seeing exists? Is it because of darkness that the seeing exists? Is it because of emptiness that the seeing exists? Is it because of solid objects that the seeing exists?" Ananda, if light brings it into existence, you should not see darkness. And if it exists because of darkness, you should not see light. It is the same with emptiness and solid objects. Moreover, Ananda, does the seeing derive from the condition of light? Does the seeing derive from the condition of darkness? Does the seeing derive from the condition of emptiness? Does the seeing derive from the condition of solid objects? Ananda, if it exists because of the condition of emptiness, You should not see solid objects. If it exists because the condition of solid objects, you should not see emptiness. It is the same with light and darkness. Thus you should know that the essential, enlightened, wonderful brightness is due to neither causes nor conditions, and it does not arise spontaneously. It is not that which is not spontaneous. It is not that it is not, nor is it that it is not not. It is not that which is or is not. Any dharma is that which is apart from all characteristics. Now, in the midst of phenomena, how can you use your mind to make distinctions that are based on worldly sophistries, terms, and characteristics? That is like grasping at empty space with your hand. You only succeed in tiring yourself out. How could empty space possibly yield to your grasp? Ananda said to the Buddha, if the nature of the wonderful enlightenment has neither causes nor conditions, then why does the world honored one always tell the bhikshus that the nature of seeing derives from the four conditions of emptiness, brightness, the mind, and the eyes? What does that mean? The Buddha said, Ananda, what I've said about all the worldly causes and conditions has nothing to do with the primary meaning. Ananda, I asked you again, people in the world say, I can see. What is meant by seeing? What is not seeing? Ananda said, due to the light of the sun, the moon, and lamps, people in the world can see all kinds of appearances. That is called seeing. If it were not for these three kinds of light, they would not be able to see. Ananda, if it is called not seeing, when there is no light, you should not see darkness. If in fact you do see darkness, which is none other than the lack of light, how can you say there is an absence of seeing? Ananda, if when it is dark, you called it not seeing, because you do not see light, then since it is now light, and you do not see the characteristics of darkness, it should also be called not seeing. Thus, the two characteristics would both be called not seeing. Although these two characteristics replace one another, your seeing nature does not lapse for an instant. Thus you can know that there is seeing in both cases. How then can you say there is no seeing? Therefore, Ananda, you should know that when you see light, the seeing is not the light. When you see darkness, the seeing is not the darkness. When you see emptiness, the seeing is not the emptiness. When you see solid objects, the seeing is not the solid objects. Having realized these four meanings, you should also know that when you see your seeing, the seeing is not the seeing to be seen. Since the former seeing is beyond the latter cannot reach it. That being the case, how can you say that your absolute intuitive perception has something to do with causes and conditions, or spontaneity, or that it has something to do with mixing and uniting? You narrow-minded sound hearers are so inferior and ignorant that you are unable to penetrate through to the purity of the characteristic of reality. Now I will teach you. You should consider it well, and do not become weary or negligent on the wonderful road to Bodhi.